Welcome to Cosmic Communion.
I would love to just start it off with the fact that this energy for me is one that I don't like. It's one that I have a lot of conditioning around because it is my matrilineal side, a lot of which have the 17, and I come from a very opinionated family. And so like whether we have 17 or not, it's like big opinions that override any sort of abstract, anecdotal, experiential wisdom.
Mhm.
And so it's been, for me, it's like I'm like already charged up. I'm already like, fuck this energy. Like, I don't even want to talk
Yeah.
about it. And weren't you saying something very similar? Like,
Oh, so my ex-husband's son is 17, and then my best friend in high school who I was pretty much in a relationship with, like, very, very tight
yeah,
codependent relationship with, son
yeah,
also in 17.
uh,
Um,
yeah,
Both of them projectors, both with the 1762 fueled by the, 5818. So
yeah,
the combination of those 2 are lethal.
yeah,
Like, those opinions fueled by judgment
yeah,
is so yeah, it's this gate, is definitely a huge sore spot for me too.
yeah,
I mean, both of us having undefined ajnas.
yeah,
Both of my parents had defined head and ajnas. I don't think that either of them had 17. But, really just this last week, I have been reflecting on how much I defend my mind because
yeah,
of having this kind of, like, almost trauma response to people projecting their mental infrastructure, their mental what do you even call it? Yeah, just, like, their way of seeing things onto me.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and, like, specifically in my marriage, so Drew, my ex, had 1762, 1156, and 6124. Um, so
God bless him.
his design side, like, just the red mental projector and then just the black also mental projector,
Yeah.
because he had the quantum channel for the 5818, and so
Mm,
it felt like I was constantly, like, under mental attack.
yeah,
Like, I felt myself and the deeper I got into my own deconditioning process and realizing, like, I don't need to have I'm not really here to have fixed opinions or thoughts or, ways of thinking about things. The more I really started to feel the violence that was being perpetrated through this mental realm.
yeah, yeah. So this is a big one. Or it's like it has a charge, right?
Mhm.
And, I don't think in all of Cosmic Communion so far we've done Ajna yet. So,
Mm-mm.
was there one? No,
I don't
I
think
don't
so.
even think there was. So this is
Mm-mm.
kind of like our first little, um, activation with the Ajna and kind of contemplating that. And I wanna say real quick, so in the
Mhm.
Gene Keys, this is the shadow of opinion, the gift of farsightedness, and the city of omniscience. And something that's, like, coming up for me as we're beginning to open this conversation, I was talking to our friend Allison yesterday, and something that I'm really tuning into is the solar plexus being the masculine and the spleen being the feminine. And
Hmm.
if we think about it and right, like, if you're listening to this, like, hypothesis, that's a question mark, I'm not saying that for certain. But if we think about that, the logical understanding circuit, which is 17, is rooted in
Mm.
the spleen.
Oh my god.
And yeah.
Wait, I'm
So
getting
there
it now.
so there is a very Well, I think we need to, like, explore this together. I think there's
Yeah.
actually a very feminine quality to the 17. We live in a society that has we are experiencing so many, like, backwards paradoxes where one thing used to mean this and now it means the other, and it's got inverted in on itself, and one of these concepts is the feminine versus the masculine. Like, a lot of those aspects have gotten flipped in on each other. Eisen
Mhm.
and Sister Shanti talk a lot about this in their work, and what it is to actually be in the feminine, which is it's the womb, it's the creator, it is the structure, it's the
Yes.
mountain, and
Mhm.
so if you look at the understanding circuitry, the logical circuitry, it's the structure. And so it's an interesting kind of inversion where we've, like, experienced this mental energy is very like, to me, if I just feel into it, I'm like, it's very masculine, right? Like, it's very or
What we have
have come
labeled
to
masculine.
what we have labeled masculine, but
You
perhaps
know,
might be feminine.
something that this brings up for me is, like, who really gets more emotional?
Right.
Like,
Yeah,
let's be real here. Like,
yeah,
the huge outbursts of anger, like, the women are the ones who are because out of necessity of taking care of the children, we have to have that calm, cool, logical intellect, like, activated, right? In order to protect the babies.
yeah, we're the stillness. We're the earth, and so the earth is calm and still and cool, waiting
Mm.
for the seed to be planted. And so
Mhm.
actually, yeah, we can also kind of see the disservice that this has done to men.
Yeah.
"Oh, shove down your emotions, you're not" but they're the initiators of life force
Right.
in an embodied sense, right? If we're looking at kind of that binary there in the physical form. But, like,
Yeah.
they're really here to be that
And that
initiatory force of life.
and thinking about the 59-6, the
Yeah,
6 really does feel more masculine,
yeah,
right? And then the feminine is the one breaking down barriers to achieve union, but the man is bringing that friction, right?
yeah,
That's so
yeah.
interesting.
I think in the way
Um,
that I've read that too, there I wonder what lecture this is. The 6 is the diaphragm. It's the
oh.
entry point. It's like the opening. So the friction is caused when there's like a closing and a non-receptivity. Um,
Mm.
like, I think the 59 is like kind of the is the what's the word? The positive charge and the 6 is the negative receptive charge. Um But yeah, the it's you can kind of, like, look at the circuitry and start seeing where some of these inversions have occurred, and so in the case of
Mhm.
the 17, this idea of the gift being farsightedness and the city of omniscience, it's like the great mother. She's everywhere. We're being held all the
Mm.
time in every single moment,
Mhm.
and so even the way that we've come to understand logic is an exacerbated experience of the ajna. Like, it's, like,
Totally.
just overly projected. It's been
Mhm.
overly mechanicalized. I don't even know if that's a word.
No, totally. This is a conversation that I've been having with Daje recently. Because, she's triple air, like, she has her design earth is in 47, and so we've been having this conversation around the ajna and how within the spiritual community, there is this, like, rejection of logic and reason and the mind, right? The mind has
Mhm.
become villainized in human design, and so many other spiritual practices.
Yeah.
But this is how we bring new worlds into being, right? Like, the principle of mentalism and,
This is everything.
Yeah, it's literally
It
everything.
yeah.
And so what I was really working through with her, that's when all of this kind of like Ajna trauma came up, and I wasn't even really realizing that that was there. And how protective that I feel like I have had to be in order to protect my reality.
Yeah.
Because what was happening in my marriage was that I was having this reality forced upon me that did not align with m who I am, with my perspective, with my worldview. And if I could not prove my reality with logic and reason in a way that suited his ajna, then it was completely devalidated. And I was just pretty much seen as crazy.
Yeah.
Um, and this has happened from so many men in my life, honestly. It feels like it's a really big wound and kind of warfare that's being perpetrated between the patriarchy
Whoa.
and the matriarchy, because this is how the patriarchy keeps us in the patriarchy, is through projecting this version of reality onto us and telling us that's reality. But really, we have the power to create and project our own reality. And so I feel like a big part of my healing process with my divorce was taking my power back and being like, no, I don't consent to this reality. I rebuke this reality. This is not the world
Mm,
I desire to live in. And since I've been doing my own world building and my own building of my reality, right? But I think for undefined ajnas, there's a lot of tenderness there.
yeah. Well, it's what came up for me as I was listening to you talk is it's like the wisdom of the feminine nature, this, like, potentially if that splenic hypothesis tracks, that it's been used against th the feminine
Yeah.
the feminine logic has been used against the feminine by an embodied masculine, like a the physical masculine has
Yep.
used the mental feminine. Does it's like it's,
No, I mean, and that makes sense, right? The whole like motivation behind patriarchy is that they're jealous of what we can do and they can't do. So of
yeah,
course they're going to take it from us.
using our
To create
tools.
reality, right,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
But
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
but that's not your role, and so you're not using it the way that it
yeah,
was meant to be used, you're distorting it, because you're not
right.
just surrendering to your role.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, it is also a big part of, like, the personal process that's happening on the back end right now is that I think we're starting to exist outside of these binaries, like, even in the physical form, and realize that we contain all of that within ourselves, and the way that we bring regenerative, life-affirming, action into the world, whether a physical female or a physical male, is by balancing that masculine and feminine energy within ourselves. And
Mhm.
so yeah, like, we can look out into the world and see, like, how it's been perpetrated and, like, used as weapons against specific groups of, like, very specific ideologies using the mind.
Mhm.
Um, but really it's like, I don't know, I feel like the Siddhic level of omniscience is really kind of a defining quality of where the opinion comes from. That, like,
Mm.
there is opinions are so annoying to me, but there's a lot of value in allowing the mind, right? We were just you were speaking to this, like, we've demonized the mind as if it isn't the entire center of our reality, literally. And so opinions that formulate inside of the ajna are formulating from a very specific pattern and process in that is being experienced in that reality.
Yeah.
And so how it's more just like, how do we allow these opinions to exist without exerting them into full-blown truth?
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's the attachment to the opinions,
Yeah.
which is where we get in trouble, but, I mean, an opinion is just a way of organizing reality. into
Yeah.
what we prefer and what we don't prefer, what we like, what we don't
Oh,
like, what's
that.
for us, what's not for us.
Yes.
Um, but it's when we make our opinions our identity, that's when we get in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was like I just I feel like I have such an up close and personal, experience with that, with making your opinions your identity. I mean, I met
Yeah.
my ex-husband in Washington, DC. We were both like I was working in the international development nonprofit space, he was working in politics. He's, like, somebody who's, like, always, like, reading the news on Twitter, like, just so up with all of the things and, like, really kind of, like, getting off on having these he's also a 3-5 though, so it's funny because like, he has these, like, heretical perspectives on things, or at least at some level, but then it was like, I would be cornered, like, "Okay, so, like, what do you think?" You know?
Yeah.
And then it's like
Yeah.
and then I started thinking like him and having his opinions, and that was a way that I was giving my power and my autonomy over to him, right?
Yeah.
So much that was like, I have this real insecurity around what I know.
Yeah.
Actually, I've just been working through, like, the last few months from the German New Medicine perspective, I was resolving an intellectual conflict. Um
Oh, yes.
And that feels really tied to this Ajna stuff of not being smart enough, like, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was in high school, and I've always been a really slow reader, um, and so I've had this I also, like, went to a really bougie private school where, like, everybody had tutors and stuff, and so I always just felt not smart enough or like I didn't know enough, and because I've always been surrounded by so many defined Ajnas, I've felt that insecurity, and as a result, kind of yielded to them.
Yeah. Yep. This is the thing that I'm wanting to say here. One, collective circuitry. So really there is like a pressure here to share, the keynote of sharing. It's like I want to bring you into my worldview and how I'm experiencing that. So I think in that way it's that can kind of destigmatize a bit. The charge behind it is like when we look at opinions as this way that people are involving us in their worlds, it's like kind of cute. Um, but also the fact that we live in such an information saturated world that we're not like evolved to
Mhm.
receive this much information and data. We should not be processing like just how much we're scrolling on Instagram and the world news. I This is an interesting, of course it's 17 because I've been seeing a lot of reels about I saw a reel that was like essentially we're evolved to be in community with about 100 to 150 people.
Mhm. Yep.
And just also kind of other type of stuff that is talking about the overwhelm of information. And so we just also have this exacerbated way of our ajna is here to process what we're digesting, what we're taking
Yeah.
in through our what our brains are processing through what we're inputting. And
Mhm.
so we're gonna continue to have these opinions because the opinion is just I love how you said it's a preference. That's all that it's speaking to is like, how is it how is this input of information, um, creating my reality? What do I think about it? Does it belong? Does it not? Wow.
Um, I did kind of wanna open up Brynja's book again, though, because I thought that was fun last week,
Yeah,
and for 17, she has assigned the alligator,
interesting.
which is interesting because that's literally how it would feel sometimes, is like I was getting my, like, head bit off
Yeah.
by the mind. So in the I Ching, hexagram 17 points to the concept of becoming able to listen to and follow a trusted higher force, which in turn may attract followers to oneself. A wise man should follow the guidance of nature by heeding its patterns, resting when night falls. This hexagram is advising you to adapt to the situations which arise. When it's dark, rest. Even when darkness falls, there can be a benefit if you act in accordance with it. That's interesting. This gate prepares data to be organized to be ready for expression. When the 17th gate absorbs facts about its reality, it is preparing a structured assessment or framework that can make sense of the world. These opinions are incredibly useful for easing fears and navigating life so long as they are not self critical, judgmental, or rigid.
Oh
Did
my
that bring anything
gosh.
up for you?
Yeah. Well, it's bringing up this, like, I feel like it's kind of affirming this, like, splenic
Mm
idea that I have, which is that there is, like, a nurturing quality that the opinion brings that is really, like, all about creating a sense of safety for the physical reality outside of it.
hmm.
Yeah.
Mm hmm. So, the animal totem. The alligator totem is quite complex. This is because it entails a great many principles within the umbrella term of integration. That's interesting. So, like integrating the data and the information in order for expression and manifestation. Alligator navigates the waters between life and death. Alligator totem also encompasses the sharp aspect of motherhood, judgments, grief, rigidity, absorption of new experiences, opinions, and the dichotomy of pain and pleasure. When extreme circumstances rattle us, there needs to be a period of adjustment. Integration allows one to process an intense experience through the mind, body, heart, and soul until the experience is fully absorbed and filed away as a memory. If alligator has come to you, it is a time of finding your way through what life has chosen for you to learn. Francis Weller writes in his book, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, here we are asked to hold an extended vigil with loss in the well of silence, slowly ripening our sorrow into something dense and gifting to the world. Our ability to drop into this interior world and do the difficult work of metabolizing sorrow is dependent on the community that surrounds us. You may need to adapt to hardships in new and creative ways, ask for help, or create ritual. Alligator is a guardian of barriers, and while cold, it watches over the ceremony of crossing thresholds and digesting the litany of emotions and insights that follow. That's interesting because that then brings together this connection of the spleen and the solar plexus binary, like
Mhm.
that the ajna helps us process what happens in the solar plexus, process those feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I feel like Pisces season really started kind of expanding upon the kind of correspondent nature of the spleen and the solar plexus, that they balance each other, like, one is rest, one is action, and, like, there it is that it's like a dual nature of, like, just integration. It's a loop that helps us, like, the density that it was speaking to. The spleen is, like, all about density and richness and depth. It's like it's the well. And so it's like, and it exists inside of the body, like, literally inside of the DNA. And what is the ajna except for the home of our design crystal? It's literally
Oh.
where every part of our DNA structure and our physical form is imprinted from.
Oh, whoa.
So, yeah, when we're taking in, like, outside information, we're combining that with the physical vessel, and the spleen is helping to process, like, what belongs and what doesn't, which is bringing me to how to the kind of the fact that, these kind of first, I think 4 or 5, no, 4 gates of Aries season all track to the amino acid of arginine, and
Mm.
arginine is all about integration, metabolism.
Hmm.
So it's taking in information, input, consumption, and it arginine is the protein that says, like, are we storing this or are we, like, using this? Are we gonna put it
Hmm.
into the body or are we gonna, like, use it to get shit done?
Interesting.
And so, and that's, like, very Aries, right? Like,
Yeah.
what are
And
we
that
do
kind of, like, sorting process, right? It's like which is feels like that 1762, right? It's like, okay, like, where
Totally,
does this belong?
totally.
I have even though even though, I have a chip on my shoulder about 1762 is my Mars in Cancer in the 10th house, and so this is a really big placement for me too, also, like, having a
Mm,
Scorpio stellium, Mars is the traditional ruler of Scorpio.
yeah,
And I think that is another really interesting, um, yeah, kind of like confirmation around the logical being the mother, right? 62 is a Cancer gate, the
yeah.
gate of
Oh, wow.
details,
Yeah,
right? Organizing the details.
that's really interesting.
And think about it, like, let's be honest, like, the mom versus the dad, like, the mom's got it all friggin' figured out.
Yeah, yeah,
She's got all of the details organized, she knows what's happening when, like,
yeah,
we're not relying on men for that.
yeah. We're relying on men to, like, go out and do and, like, bring it back, right? And that there is, like there can be very, like, dysfunctional ways that that pattern is like, exacerbated. I keep saying that word, but I feel like it's really qualitative of, like, what happens in the mind because of all this information that we're trying to just sort in our society. Like, we're told that we need to be caring about all of these things outside of us that we're literally not evolved our brains are not evolved to, like, have to care about.
Right.
But, yeah, we see, like, dysfunctional patterns show up, but, like, also there's a very very much, like, a natural way that that happens. The women or the mothers, I will say, the mothers, the main primary caretaker knows the details, is, like, nesting the home, is, like, doing all the little the tending, and then that masculine figure is going out and bringing that action to sustain it, to allow for um, that deep, restful, integrative process to take place.
And what's coming to mind now is, like, on the other side of the ajna, which would be solar plexus binary, we have the 1156. 56 is the wanderer, right? So, like,
Yeah.
the men are
Yes.
going out, they're wandering around, they're pulling in new ideas for bringing in resources, right,
Yeah.
for the family.
Yeah.
Um,
They're chopping wood, carrying water, like,
yeah,
they're hunting back in the day, but
yeah. And I
gonna
think
be
another keynote for 56 is stimulation too, mental stimulation.
yeah. Yeah.
So it's like that more like yang versus the details. It's like, okay, like what do we have here? How can we organize it? Like what does this mean? Like how can we,
Yeah.
um yeah, I feel like this has actually been really healing to reclaim this cuz this has been like I haven't really I've actually just in the last few months explored my Mars 62 and started to see that based on a piece of recognition and reflection that you gave me, Cody. Like I don't know why I've never seen myself as, like, a detail-oriented person. I've always, like, had this idea of, like, the ADHD and being, all over the place, but I'm like, "Oh, no, actually, I am incredibly detail-oriented, and I care a lot about details, and I'm motivated to get the details because" and I have it in this first line too, it's like, "Because I want those details, because like, that's the foundation upon which I can do things out in the world, my 10th house."
Yeah.
Um
Yeah.
and even just contemplating the fact that that is actually a cancer gate, like, that is the mother, um, has been really healing and, like, a big reclamation of a piece of me that I had kind of not seen before or even cast away.
And and hasn't Mars been doing something in Cancer too for
Yeah,
you? So, like,
yeah,
that's been kind of like a big integrative process?
yeah. The Mars
Yeah.
retrograde went over my natal Mars 3 times.
Oh, yeah.
So but it's been really great.
Yeah.
I feel like, yeah, it's been a really beautiful integration and, yeah, an integration of this energy and this gift that I have, and it's the only planet that I have that's not in the 1st through 5th house. It's, like, my only planet in the
Mm.
kind of transpersonal part of the astrology chart,
Oh,
which is kinda interesting.
that makes sense to me. Yeah,
Yeah,
because it is more of this quality that you're using, like, out there,
right. Like, and it's a big
transpersonally.
part of my yeah, like, my work in the world, you
Yeah.
know?
Yep.
And owning that is what kind of really opened up this momager stuff. Like, "Oh, yeah,
Wow.
I can do this." Like, this
Yeah,
is one of my gifts. It's something I do really naturally, so I don't
you
always
do.
see that I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, no, this was, I agree, this was very healing to the 17. I feel like the advice or, like, the thing to walk away with is just, like, we're taking in too much information. Of course, there's annoying opinions out there.
mhm.
But, like, how often are we allowing, like, the external opinion to inform our own process? We're
Yes,
not
to
designed for
influence
it.
us.
Yeah. Are we listening to our own opinions to help formulate and create some sort of nurturing containment for ourselves and our body? Like,
Yeah,
that's it. I
yeah.
also have to I don't know why I have to say this or, like, talk about this, but when you were talking about the alligator, I was being brought this is such a silly story, so whatever, but, when I was a child, I remember there was, like, a newspaper or, like, some sort of magazine that, like, my dad would occasionally get, and it was, like, this oh gosh, what's that, like it's, like, world news or something, it's kind of, like, crazy headlines. Do you know the one I'm talking
Yeah,
about?
yeah. The Enquirer?
The Enquirer, yes, and my dad had brought that home. I was probably, like, 5 or 6. I remember this so vividly, and there was, like, this crazy headline, from, like, half alligator, half man from Florida, and there was a picture of this, like, half alligator, half man, and it has stuck with me. Like I used to try to draw him, the half alligator, half man. It was, like, it was such a
Well,
thing.
that's like a that's like, so in a lot of, like, the creation stories, it's like the human body, right, and the reptile head.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So
But
that was probably it was as a child, it was probably triggering a, like, memory about that, but, like, in all of the, like, ancient Sumerian paintings and the Mayan paintings, like, everywhere across the world, you see this, like, god that has a human body and a reptile head.
oh
We're
my
not
gosh,
gonna
I'm gonna
go
have to go
into
look
the
this up.
reptilian, deep dive in this episode, but yeah,
That's a whole, like,
that
2
was
hour.
probably your little self, like, remembering about
Dude,
that.
it was a very intense experience for me as a child for whatever reason, and I'm like, why am I gonna share this story right now? I have to, but anyway.
No,
So for
that
anybody
there's
listening, does anybody else remember that half alligator, half man, or is it just me? Was I just a weird child? But, oh,
that's really funny.
17,
Yeah.
17.
Was there something else I was gonna say? It's gone.
Gone. We did it,
Yeah, we did it.
and I've got a
Oh,
couple
I
minutes to
think
spare.
yeah, I think that just the last thing I'll leave people is, like, with an invitation to if you're feeling overwhelmed by the state of the world, the, horrific events that are happening around the planet, you can tune this information out, and it doesn't make you a bad person.
Yeah.
I lived in Washington, DC. I was super, like, absorbed into all of that world and really thought that it was my responsibility to, know what's going on in all of these foreign places and all of the, violence that's being perpetrated against people. And it literally, like, almost killed me. I got so burnt out, from it that I just had to eventually shut it out, and so a big part of my, like, spiritual awakening process has been giving myself permission to not take these, like, weights of the world on, and know that simply by just being myself, attuning to my own role, my own purpose, that is creating the impact and the change that I'm here to make. We're really being like by just all this information that we're receiving about the atrocities everywhere, they're harvesting our attention, right?
Yeah.
And in that our life force is being given to that atrocity. We think that, like, by paying attention, that that's somehow making a positive impact, but really by, like, giving all of our energy and attention to that, it's taking us out of our actual life and our actual purpose and
Yeah.
distracting us from the work that we're here to do. So, I just wanted to end on that note because, yeah, that's been a really big part of my journey, and it's been really hard.
Yeah. I'm glad that you shared that because I think it's a really sore spot that people are coming into an awareness of, but also having a hard time reclaiming because there is so much external expectation,
Yeah.
especially if you consider yourself that is someone who is socially sensitive to your communities and you really do want to kind of you consider yourself a leader on this like new earth front, really like sowing the seeds of a better reality. There's almost an additional pressure upon having to stay tuned into that. And for some people, there that might be, a large part of their purpose in their work, but there is also something to be said about understanding mental limitations. When is too much when is it too much for your body to literally digest and
Yeah.
process? Um, yeah, beautiful. 17.
Happy Aries season. We have a
Happy
solar
Aries.
eclipse in Aries coming up this Saturday. Um, and I'm very excited to see what that brings.
Yeah,
And Neptune is moving into Aries as well. And so yeah, there's a lot happening this week.
yeah, yeah, it's a big one. I feel like honestly the way that we talked about it today, I feel like it actually is an invitation into the body to look at this kind of like this Arginine, Aries, like what are we taking in? What are we processing? What is the fuel for our purpose and our drive into the world? And how do we like exert that personal power? But until next time.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Cosmic Communion. If you enjoyed this conversation with me and Cody, then you can find us inside Heavenly Bodies, where we dive deeper into the cosmic synthesis. This episode is brought to you by Seed Sounds Media, and we invite you to enter the creative crucible, a space for initiation deeper into yourself and your creative process. To learn more, you can visit seedsounds.com/memberships or click the link in the show notes.